take a look at a couple knots here. We're going to look at a square knot, a couple different ways to tie that, and why we would tie that, and a sheet bend and double sheet bend, and why we would even use those. So real quick on a square knot, really the main reason that we teach that is there's still some guys that are using Skegco's, and you'll need to tie that square knot into the end of that. Also, if you're doing dog and tails, for a load release or anything like that, you'll need to do the square knot. So obviously, just like you learned in Boy Scouts, you can go right over left, left over right, and get that square knot. The key components of the square knot is the two tails that you have need to be on the same side. So if I'm looking at the knot in this configuration, the bottom sides are the running ends, and my two tails are on the top. So we need to make sure it's in that configuration. If we would reverse that configuration, we would see where that would then have the tendency to slip out. So when we have the tails on the opposite, when we start tensioning that, you can see how it starts moving and releasing. Another way real quick that we use typically on the end of a Skegco is it's sometimes with that rope that gets under UV and it gets wet, starts to shrink a little bit because it's just a nylon rope on there, is usually at the very end of that Skegco, those two loose ends are coming out at the feet, which papooses back into the casualty. And so what we'll typically do is just make two turns just like this, like we're making a girth hitch, and marry those together. So in this configuration, just as above, my tail end is kind of on top. I take my other end that's coming out, and we're joining this like at the feet of a Skegco. I'm going to bring that from the bottom up because I want my loose tails on the same side. And as I come in there, I'm able to really tension that knot really on a 2-to-1 when you look at it, and get as much of that tail as I can, tension that, and when I can't get it anymore, I just grab and take my thumb and flip that over into my square knot. So there's a little bit of controversy within Element on who created that, so I won't say anything, although we'll probably put it on a blog. So girth hitch, come up under there, I'm able to tension that on the bottom of the Skegco, hold what I got, flip that over with my thumb, and crank that down into my square knot by tightening and then tightening. Next knot we're going to look at is the sheet bend. So we really don't tie sheet bends a whole bunch. A lot of other alternatives out there. Obviously in our improv class is where the sheet bend comes into play with other things besides rope. But real quick to look at that, we're just going to take a bend just like this, and we're going to start off just like we were going to tie a square knot. On a square knot, I'd come through, loop it around the neck of this bite, and come down. And my loose ends, tight ends, my terminal ends are going to be on the same side. Well, I want that on my sheet bend, but in this case, I'm going to have to bring it around this direction, and then instead of bringing it through that hole like I would on a square knot, I'm going to flip it right under in there and tighten the sheet bend down. So acceptable for what we do in our improv. Probably a little bit better would be doing a double sheet bend, which is nothing more than giving yourself a little bit more slack, and when you go under there, we're just going to do it twice. Also hear that called a rescue sheet bend. So now I've got that through twice, bring that down, tighten it, ends are on the same side, and we're good to go.